I know why you run an animal sanctuary, but can you explain for people who are watching this why you do that?
So first of all, there's a lot of different sides to this story. Yeah. One of the sides to the story is that my whole life when I was coming up as a journalist, right, I covered a lot of different things, but I would go extraordinarily far out of my way to hang out with scientists who were hanging out with animals. So I spent some time with Patricia Wright in Madagascar studying lemurs, and I kept doing all these other things. And I was actually I'm a big believer in service. I think everybody should have a little service component in their life. I was running a different nonprofit. It was called the Reporters Gym. It was in LA. It was with the LA Lakers and Dave Egger's organization, 826LA, and we were teaching inner city kids how to be sports writers, literacy as a ticket out of poverty. And it was great, really changing lives. I didn't particularly love working with teenagers. It wasn't my thing. I like animals more than I like people. And it suddenly clicked that I was going extraordinarily far out of my way to go to hang out with animals. And I was running this service project, and why didn't I just, get away from helping people and go back to helping animals? It fit better with who I was. Rancho de Chihuahua, when my wife and I started it, and this was her doing, I just didn't know any better. She said, I want to work with hospice cases, I want to work with special needs dogs, and I want to work in a very, very rural and poor community, because those are all the gaps in the rescue network. Nobody wants to work with Chihuahuas, yet they're the most euthanized dog in America, more than pit bulls. Wow. Nobody wants to work with special needs dogs or hospice dogs because the animals die, or their special needs case, you'll work with them for a year, 2 years before you adopt them out, and the emotional bonds are really strong, and it's emotionally difficult to do. All this work is really, really emotionally difficult to do. And my wife was, when she was proposing all this to me, she was like, well, I'm tough enough to take it. And I was like, well, okay, I guess, what do I say at that point? And so that's what we did. We tried to kind of build an organization that filled huge gaps in the rescue net. And it's tricky. We're outside the kind of traditional funding models and things like that. So there was a lot of things we kind of had to reinvent along the way. Our healing methodologies are very, very different, all that stuff, but immensely rewarding and super, super fun. And, I also like, with service when it's in your life, when it's built in, right? We live in the animal sanctuary, right? There's no separation. When I'm, talking to you on a podcast, there's 15 dogs sitting around my feet. I like that. I like when it's integrated in my life. I found it was easier to be a little bit uncomfortable all the time, rather than having to say, okay, this one day a week I'm going to go on, this is my day I do service, and I'm going to be, took myself out of my life. I'd rather have it integrated into it and just, reset what normal was rather than try to change it the other way.
So it was part of your design for being in a state of flow, and just something that made you happy.
Well, that's the other thing. I wanted to. So and I spoke about it this morning at the conference, there's an altruism-based flow state, right? Helper's high. And one of the things about flow is the more flow you get, the more flow you get, right? You're training the brain. It's a skill set, and it crosses over. So if you're an athlete and you're a skier and you're getting lots of flow on the ski slopes, it's going to bleed into your work life, right? So now I've got my writing life, very flow heavy, right? Creativity triggers flow. I've got, when I have free time, I hurl myself down mountains at high speeds, very good flow trigger. And then there's altruism, which is the other thing that, is always there. So everything around me is a flow trigger. My whole life is designed to produce more of the state.
If what you've heard on Flow Research Collective Radio has been helpful, please consider doing us a solid and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to this. Reviews help us connect to a wider audience so we can get these peak performance principles out to more people.